Hello, welcome back. My name's Ryan, and I'm here to be your guide on haunted highways. Tonight we are at the San Bernardino International Airport, formerly known as the Norton Air Force Base. This base used to be a logistics and heavy transport center until 1994, when it was transferred to the city, became a public airport. However, during its time as a military base, there were a lot of rumors about it. A lot of people claimed that in a structure known as the Big Hangar, there was some unusual activity. Some people claimed that alien UFOs were actually recovered and stored there. It was said by one lieutenant, Lieutenant John Williams, that not even the base wing commander knew exactly what was going on inside the Big Hangar. This specific story begins with an aerospace concept artist by the name of Mark McAllister. Now, he did a lot of the concept art you've seen for things like the F-117, B-2, or other kind of experimental planes that maybe haven't been shown yet, or theoretical planes. He is a concept artist who creates this artwork for various publications. Now, he was going to come here to the Norton Air Force Base for a military air show. Well, it was a public air show on a military base back in 1988. And he invited an associate of his named Brad Sorensen to come to the show as well. And Brad was going to bring an associate of his who was actually a CEO of one of the big aerospace companies. Now, it ended up that Mark wasn't able to come because he had a prior commitment to complete some art for a publication. So Brad went on his own with the aerospace CEO. And after the show, a few days went by, and Mark contacted Brad, said, "Hey, how was the show? I heard they were going to have the SR-71 Blackbird on display and some other cool things." And Brad seemed kind of strange. He seemed weird about it. He said, "Well, to be honest, I think I saw something that I wasn't supposed to see." And this confused Mark, because Mark's like, "Well, we both have top secret clearance. What could you have seen that you weren't supposed to see?" He goes, "Well, the CEO led me over to a hangar that was heavily guarded by military personnel. He showed some kind of ID to them, and they let us into a private air show that was only military brass and a few aerospace, bigwigs. And inside they were showing us some experimental aircraft. There was a prototype of the B-2 bomber. There was a high-speed jet they called the Pulsar, which some people theorize is the legendary Aurora jet that some people say was flying around in the 1980s. There was some experimental hovercraft and some other stuff. But then they pulled a curtain back, and behind this curtain were they were basically three flying saucers. And when they were actually hovering several feet above the floor. The smallest one was about 26 feet in diameter. The biggest one was somewhere between 150 and 200 feet. And as soon as they showed us those, the CEO, he kind of gasped. He seemed to know what they were, but he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know we were going to be seeing this. Just, I don't know if you're supposed to be here. Just stay quiet. We'll get out of here as quickly as possible." Now, these military men begin to give an explanation of what people were looking at. These were vehicles that were referred to as ARVs, Alien Reproduction Vehicles. They were supposedly designed based on wreckage that was recovered from UFO crashes. They also had sort of a nickname. They were called Fluxliners. And amazingly, one of these vehicles, the small one, had several panels removed off of its body so people could actually get a look inside to see how it worked. And it was remarkably simple. There were some marine batteries, a Tesla coil, and a stack of flat panel capacitors on the bottom. And as far as the propulsion, there was also some seats and some oxygen tanks and some other hardware, a ring of cameras, of bubble cameras along the outside. But otherwise, the technology was fairly straightforward. This display also included a diagram showing how some of the inner workings of the vehicle worked. Now, I said it was powered by marine batteries, but actually, apparently the marine batteries only powered a system that allowed this vehicle to tap into what's known as zero-point energy, which is a theoretical energy source that spans the universe and supposedly could provide insane amounts of power. And a three-star general on site was asked how fast the vehicle could go, and he replied, "Light speed or better." They also had a video on display showing these vehicles performing test maneuvers somewhere out in the desert, probably Area 51. and they could go from standing still to shooting up straight up like a bullet. And it had to be some kind of gravity distortion at work, because there appeared to be no inertial damage. Going from 0 to hundreds of miles an hour would have killed any occupant and would have ripped the vehicle apart, but these vehicles appeared to do it effortlessly. In fact, they appeared to behave very similar to how UFOs are said to behave in a lot of the UFO reports that we hear all over the world. Now, as Brad was telling the story to Mark was saying, well, can you describe what it looks like? And Brad drew a very rough sketch of what he remembered, of the shape of the craft, what he saw inside. He explained as much as he could remember from the diagram. And again, Mark was a professional illustrator. He went home and he sketched out a really detailed diagram of one of these craft. And when Mark saw it, or when Brad saw it, he was amazed. He said, "This is exactly what I saw." And from that point on, Mark has been very public with sharing this information. He's done a number of UFO lectures. He's pretty much toured all over the world talking about what he saw. He's also gotten verification that these craft were seen in other places. At one point, Mark met a gentleman who used to be stationed over at Edwards Air Force Base, and he was no longer there. And he mentioned one time that he had seen a flying saucer. He was sent across the base to retrieve some piece of equipment that needed to be fixed, and he walked past a hangar that had its door cracked, and he looked in, and he saw a flying saucer inside. And Mark was like, "Oh, did it have black domes around it? It was this shape and this and that." And the guy's like, "Wow, you've seen it too." It apparently matched Mark's description perfectly. And I should also mention that when Brad was explaining this craft and describing it, he said that it was not brand new, that it had, the panels were kind of dirty, they had fingerprints all over, there were scratches, there were footprints. It looked like this thing had been around for a while. And the more Mark researched it, there have been reports of vehicles very similar to this since the late 1960s. So it's possible these craft have been flying for a number of years. Now, that obviously begs the question, how come we don't have this technology? How come there aren't more, how come we're still using winged aircraft? And it's hard to say. Maybe it's still super, super top secret. Maybe we've got a secret fleet of these things, and the government has managed to keep them a secret for decades. Or maybe the technology is just really unstable. Maybe these crafts are unreliable or they don't fly well. It's hard to say. But the bottom line is that apparently several of these crafts were on display here at the hangar in San Bernardino. Now, some people might be surprised that they would do it at an air show that was open to the public, and I'll admit, I'm a little bit skeptical based on that too. I heard one version of the story where people at the air show were actually put in a helicopter, flown out to the Air Force's Plant 42 out in the desert, and that's where the craft were. And to be honest, that sounds more believable to me. But in interviews with Mark McCandlish himself, he says that according to Brad, they were actually here on this base at the big hangar. There are rumors about how they got them in and out of here, because the Norton Air Force Base has a community around it. It's kind of hard to sneak in something that big. Apparently what they would do is at night, they would kill the lights on the base in that area. They would bring out a row of hook and ladder trucks hanging a tarp, and they'd pull these trucks out, dragging these with these big tarps hung up, and create kind of a tarp wall around the outside of the hangar, and then the craft would drift out, and then with its lights out, whatever illumination it may have had, it would just shoot straight up into the night sky at full speed. And that was apparently how they brought them, at least got them out of this area, and I'm assuming they used a similar method to get them in. It's hard to say. Other people may ask, well, if Mark McCandlish is releasing all of this secret information, why is the government letting him get away with it? And again, it's an excellent question. It's possible that the story isn't accurate, or it's also possible that they figure Mark's just going to sound crazy, and it's going to sound like your typical UFO, web internet story, and people won't pay it any mind. And that is entirely possible as well. However, it's come to my attention that in 2022, Mark McCandlish was found dead in his home in Redding, California. He was shot in the head, and it's apparently been classified as a suicide. Now, you can do with that what you will, but I think you have to admit it's at least a little bit suspicious. So again, we hope you enjoyed hearing the story. And thank you so very much for joining us at Haunted Highways. And remember, if you're into ghost hunting or you want to get into studying the paranormal on your own, we'd like to recommend that you try a piece of software called The Plan. This is a Windows application you can purchase that is specifically designed for ghost hunting by ghost hunters. It's designed to log all of your team, who has found what, keep track of all the activity, to keep track of your photos, your EVPs, video files, anything that you catch, to log and keep and track everything. Best of all, this app is only $20, actually $19.95, and it's available at the link down below in the description. And if you click that and make a purchase, it definitely does help the channel. So if that's something you're looking for to bring your ghost hunting to the next level, I suggest you take it out. Thank you so very much for joining us on Haunted Highways. Have a great night.